Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling a topic that literally dominates our news feeds, our family dinners, and our daily conversations. We're talking about political parties. I mean, we hear about them every single day, right? But how often do we actually stop to unpack what they are, how they function, and why they're so absolutely vital to our society in the first place? In this explainer, we are going to break down the structural mechanics and theories from this chapter to truly understand this everyday phenomenon. Okay, let's dive into this. We've got a great roadmap today. First, we'll look at the political party paradox. Then, we'll define what a party actually is, explore their core functions, examine the vital role of the opposition, and finally, get into the challenges and necessary reforms. Starting with Section 1, the political party paradox, visibility versus popularity. You know, it's a fascinating irony that something so totally integral to our modern democratic society is also one of the most heavily criticized institutions out there. Which brings us to the fundamental question that kicks off this whole chapter. Why do we even need political parties at all? Seriously, if people are so constantly frustrated with them, why do they exist? If you look back about 100 years ago, very few countries had political parties. But today, there are very few that don't. How did they become so omnipresent? Well, consider this paradox. If you travel to remote areas and ask an ordinary citizen about the intricacies of the Constitution, they might just draw a blank. But ask them about political parties, and they'll know exactly what you're talking about. For a lot of folks, democracy literally equals political parties. But here's the catch. That high visibility absolutely does not mean popularity. People tend to be highly critical of them, very often blaming parties for all the social and political divisions we experience. Let's move to Section 2 and see how this builds. Defining a political party, the textbook meaning. To truly figure out why we need them, we have to understand what these organizations actually are in practice. So, by definition, a political party is a group of people who come together to contest elections and hold power in the government. Sounds simple, right? But it definitely goes deeper. These groups agree on specific policies and programs for the society with the ultimate goal of promoting the collective good. Now, since collective good means vastly different things to different people, parties essentially spend their time trying to persuade voters that their specific set of policies is the superior choice. So, the crucial point here is that a political party isn't just a single charismatic leader standing on a stage. It's an entire structured organization made up of three distinct essential components. First, you've got the leaders. They're the ones making the major policy decisions. Second, the active members. These are the individuals working tirelessly on the ground, organizing and campaigning. And third, the followers, the dedicated citizens who reliably support and vote for the party's vision. It's the whole shebang. All right, Section 3, core functions and duties. What do? Let's shift our focus to the operational engine of this chapter to understand the actual heavy lifting that political parties perform in a democracy. Their first big function is contesting elections, whether it's through vibrant graffiti on walls in places like Tamil Nadu or massive, heavily funded nationwide campaigns. Parties visibly and loudly fight for your attention and your votes. In most democracies, elections are essentially a competition among candidates put forward by political parties. Because think about it, without parties, every single candidate would be independent. Imagine the utter chaos of trying to form a consensus if every single leader was entirely on their own. The second massive function is putting forward policies and programs. In any large society, there are millions, literally millions, of varying opinions on what the government should do. And honestly, no government can handle that sheer variety of views. So parties act like a massive funnel. They reduce that vast multitude of public opinions into just a few basic, actionable policy positions that voters can realistically evaluate and choose from. Function number 3, forming and running governments. The reality of holding office is that big, sweeping policy decisions are taken by the political executive, and those executives are drawn directly from the winning parties. The parties recruit the leaders, train them, and make them ministers so they can run the complex machinery of government according to their established vision. Moving right along to Section 4, role of the opposition, the vital counterweight. This is the critical balance required in any healthy democratic system. We have to look at what happens to the parties that participate but don't manage to secure enough votes to run the government. So on one side, you have the ruling party. They hold the political offices, they exercise power, and they run the government. On the other side, you have the opposition, and their job is incredibly important. They basically play the role of the critic by voicing different views, highlighting the government's failures, and mobilizing opposition to flawed policies. They keep the ruling party accountable and ensure that all voices in society are actually heard. Finally, Section 5, Challenges and necessary reforms. Fixing the flaws. Let's be real, the system isn't perfect. It's time to review the modern hurdles that political parties face and how we can potentially fix these issues to strengthen the whole system. One of the absolute most significant challenges parties face today is the growing role of money and muscle power, especially during elections. You'll often see the election commissions struggling to enforce the code of conduct. Why? Because parties are laser-focused on winning at all costs, and they can sometimes take really dangerous shortcuts. This includes nominating candidates with massive wealth or even criminal backgrounds, which ultimately completely compromises the integrity of the democratic process. So, how do we actually fix these flaws? Well, one specific major reform in India is the anti-defection law, basically to stop elected MLAs and MPs from changing parties just to grab a cash reward or a cushy minister position. This law dictates that if they switch parties, they immediately lose their seat in the legislature. It's a real game changer that has effectively brought defection down. But there's a catch. It also makes internal party dissent much more difficult. Legislators now essentially have to just accept whatever the top party leaders decide, and that can really stifle healthy, constructive debate within the party itself. And that brings us to the core thesis of this entire chapter. The problem of bad politics can be solved by more and better politics. Look, when we get frustrated with political parties, our first instinct is usually to step away, tune it all out, and just criticize them from the sidelines. But the source material makes a vital argument here. The quality of our system depends heavily on the degree of public participation. We absolutely cannot fix it by ignoring it. Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought to conclude our explainer. If the cure to bad politics is indeed more and better politics, how will ordinary citizens, how will you participate? It is incredibly difficult to reform politics if everyday people don't take part. Are you going to join a party? Will you participate in a local movement? Or will you focus on being a deeply informed voter who holds leaders accountable? Understanding the mechanics of political parties is really just the first step. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. I hope this helps you truly grasp the structure behind the daily headlines. Keep asking questions, keep engaging with information, and I'll see you in the next explainer.